Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So Muslims are at war in various different parts of the world. Innocent people are being killed, murdered and slaughtered by vengeful enemies that are bloodthirsty and are just destroying them. And one of the reasons why our people are struggling and their struggle persists is because the Muslims of the 21st century have not understood how wars are won today. They still think that wars are won how they were won back in World War II, which is two armies come together and they have artillery and they have infantry. So they have tanks, guns and soldiers, and they have firepower from above in terms of airplanes, and then the strongest one wins and the most effective one wins. That's not how it's done anymore. And I'm going to explain to you why that's not effective in the 21st century, but I will also share with you what the effective way is. It will benefit you, inshallah ta'ala, especially if you're someone that wants to do something to help those that are innocent, that those that are struggling, someone who wants to do something that's good for our ummah, for our deen, that wants to help support those that are struggling. I want to share with you exactly how you can do that in this video in a way that's actually effective, inshallah ta'ala. So without any further ado, why is it that our old school version of warfare and fighting is a bit old school and it's a bit outdated? Now, I just want to say that I'm not saying that the military element is not still an important part of how war is won, but war can be won without it completely and entirely, or it can come at a much later stage, like with the Zionists, right? The Zionist regime, as I'm going to use as a case study, or the Zionist entity, as I'll use as a case study later on in this discussion, inshallah ta'ala, they were a very divided people scattered across continents, right? They were loathed in society and considered as, the outcasts. They didn't speak even the same language amongst themselves, yet they were able to carve out a nation state for themselves, right? Though, how did they do that? They didn't have an army. They weren't even united amongst themselves. Yeah, they had some rich people amongst them, but they also had a lot of poor people that were living in a very, destitute situation. Yet how did they manage to get this land carved out for them and become a powerful military entity later on down the road? A very powerful case study. And there's a lot for us to learn in terms of exactly how they managed to do that. And of course, the evil elements and the bad elements, we can reject those, but we can learn a thing or two about strategy from them, definitely. Now, look, in this modern day and age, right, kinetic warfare is where, two armies clash head on, fight, shoot, bomb. It's not effective. You know why? Well, it's not effective for the big superpowers, because the big superpowers all have nuclear weapons. And even if they didn't have nuclear weapons, didn't use nuclear weapons, they are very, very, very close in terms of how strong they are. What happens in those type of wars is that, okay, usually there's not really going to be one victor, and if there is, there's never hardly going to be a clear victor. So for example, if USA and China were to go to war, they would just destroy themselves. They would just weaken each other out. This kind of like what happened in World War One. In World War One, you have Germany and the Ottomans who sided with them fighting against the rest of Europe. And it was really more a war of attrition, where all of these big superpowers, it was easy when they were going as colonial settlers in Africa and Asia and South America, and they were just spilling the blood of people that didn't have guns to fight back with, right? They were just slaughtering them easily because they're these big, powerful European guys with guns, and they fight people with swords. It was easy. But now you're fighting people that actually, they're very, very kind of similar to you in terms of their military capabilities, and it was just a stalemate. I think it was 1917. There was an actual stalemate. And things weren't even progressing. So what happens in such a situation is that everyone just gets tired out and just weaken each other out. And it's even worse now, because the countries that are powerful entities in the world right now, like USA, China, Russia, so on and so forth, they have even more sophisticated weaponry, and the damage that they would inflict on each other whilst not having any clear-cut decisive victor would just be horrifying, and it just wouldn't be worth it. They'd lose so much money, lose so many lives, lose so much infrastructure that it wouldn't be worth it. So they're smarter than to get involved in such type of wars, which is why what they do is they fight proxy wars, which is that they will fund, like for example, this thing between Russia and Ukraine is actually something between Russia and and Europe, right? And also America, even though now Trump is trying to get himself out of that. But this is something that's not actually between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is a proxy on behalf of Europe and the USA. So America knows if I go head to head with Russia, we're going to probably start World War III. We don't want to do that. And it's not really going to be beneficial. Russia actually has more nukes than the USA. So it's just not going to be healthy. Even though it's ever so slight, but they have more nukes. Point being is that for them, it just makes more sense. Let's just send in a proxy to do our dirty work. And that's one of the reasons and how they actually destroyed the Middle East, which is that they've got our own people to fight each other on behalf of them, right? Crazy. So that's why these big superpowers are not going to go toe to toe. Okay, but what if a big superpower fights a small group of people, right? Like, for example, how America did in Vietnam, or how America did in Afghanistan. Well, you know what happens, right? They lost. Now, this question bothered me for a while. I was like, bro, how on earth does America, with all of its might and its power and its strength, end up defeating something like, or it ends up getting defeated by something like the Taliban? And that's because the Taliban did something called guerrilla warfare. And that's exactly what they did in Vietnam as well. They use a particular type of military fighting style called guerrilla warfare. Now, I used to think guerrilla warfare means like gorilla, but no, it's actually a Spanish word. And, actually the person who modernized this art form of guerrilla warfare was actually a Muslim leader in Morocco. His name was Amir Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim al-Khattabi, when he was fighting against the Spanish and the British and the French all at the same time. And he devastated them, man. There was a time where they killed their army of 60,000 and they killed 30,000 of them and took their other 30,000 minus 600 as prisoners of war. Then they came and attacked them again the second time. They brought 500,000 soldiers. This is like 1921 to 1926. Again, they annihilated them. They only had 20,000 guys themselves. The first one, but they had 60. They had 3,000. And it's only in the last battle where they just, turned some of the people against them in the Moroccan region, and they just bombed and annihilated and used chemical weapons that they forced him to surrender. But other than that, they were just being slaughtered. Why? Because he used this thing called guerrilla warfare. And what's guerrilla warfare? Guerrilla warfare is a very difficult type of warfare. It requires you to, number one, know the land and the turf in which you're fighting. You can just blend into mountains and caves. You also don't fight head on. Your whole idea is, let me just disrupt the enemy. I'm gonna attack them when they're resting. I'm going to attack them when they're moving. I'm going to ambush them. And I come, disappear, go. It's like, how like a flea can drive a mad dog wild, right? That's what guerrilla warfare is. You're like a flea that's just inside of this big, strong, vicious, savage dog, and he just loses himself. It's like the army, the big military army, they can't fight you. It's like they're trying to drink soup with a knife. Because every time they come at you, it's just, no, you're gone. You're gone. So this concept of guerrilla warfare, which by the way, this Muslim leader called Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim al-Khattabi, who he codified and modernized in the 21st century, ultimately the Vietnamese actually came and learned from him, because later he was in Egypt. He died in Egypt, I think in 1960 something. They would actually come to him and learn, wait, tell us this style of fighting that you've invented and developed. Not invented, but developed. And this is what has now become a staple for people that fight these big, military powers. So point means that this guerrilla warfare fighting thing causes these bigger entities to become very, very weak, and over time, because the guerrilla fighters, they think in terms of, bro, I'm here for 10 years. I'm here for 20 years, bro. That's what Taliban said, bro, I'm here for 20 years. Don't worry. I double checked the stats, but it costs about $1 million or so to keep one soldier on the ground, right? From like the USA. It's like $100, maybe even less, to keep, an insurgent fighter on the ground who's a guerrilla fighter. Like, economically, they'll bankrupt you over like 10, 15, 20 years. Being a Muslim entrepreneur who's committed to making hundreds and millions of dollars through his business without compromising his deen, I can tell you this is a very lonely journey. But over the last year, I've realized that I'm not alone. In fact, some of the most sophisticated entrepreneurs are Muslims who fear Allah, and they watch this show. They attend our retreats, and they use their wealth for good. The issue is that they're all scattered. They're all alone. But inshallah, that changes once and for all on September the 6th. Because we're going to be launching our exclusive and powerful circle of Muslims making millions, inshallah ta'ala. If you make millions as an entrepreneur or have at least $10 million in assets through investments, then you qualify to join our waiting list at the link below. P.S. I just want to mention, money isn't the only qualifying factor, but it definitely is the first. So you can register your interest at the link below, inshallah ta'ala, and join the waiting list. With that said, let's get back into the discussion. So what I'm trying to get at here, guys, I'm trying to get you to dispel this thing in your mind of that the way to overcome the big bad giant, whoever that big bad giant might be, is through military strategy. And not that I'm saying that military or actual fighting never has a place or never will have a place, but I'm talking to you about what the Maidan is today. Our situation today, that's not part of it. Which is why some young Muslims who feel that they want to help, they want to do something with regards to the plight of our brothers and sisters, in a very misguided way, end up doing things like harming innocent people through like blowing themselves up or doing like terrorist attacks. And the reason why this is bad is because, I mean, it's bad on multiple levels. Haram to take the life of an innocent person, whatnot, so on and so forth. Basically, number one, bro, these guys have not declared a kinetic war on you. They're not fighting you physically. Yeah, they definitely are fighting you, but they're not fighting you physically. So you just look crazy when you pick up a gun to try and attack them. And then what happens is that they actually use the real form of warfare that they're using to actually use that as propaganda against you. So what's that real form of warfare that they use? It's something called hybrid warfare. Now, hybrid warfare has an element of kinetic in there, but it's all these other things as well. So it's economic pressure, right? People become very wealthy. They become very rich and they use their economic might and power to influence you to do things. They might sanction you, right? They might supply you oil. They might say, I'm going to cut the oil off for you, and, you know, so on and so forth. There's different things. There's also media. Right now, one of the main reasons why the Zionist regime is losing in Gaza, it's not because they don't have the military capacity to inflict heavy damage. No, they've been doing that. But the media element, of course, they're also fighting people that are using this art form called guerrilla warfare as well, which is why they're slowly just tiring them out. But at the end of the day, the point that I'm getting at here is that, bro, they've heavily lost the media battle. Only Allah knows the way that they've annihilated our brothers and sisters throughout the previous decades when no one could see what was happening on social media. But the social media war has been so effective that it's actually got people within the United States who are literally, like some people call it the United States of Israel. Like they're actually now starting to openly say, bro, stop it. Stop backing Israel. Stop it, because put America first, make America great again. That's the theme, that's the vibe. So even people within the country that actually backs them up are starting to realize, because of how the media has been used as a tool to show and expose that enemy and to defeat the enemy. They have lost the media battle. The media battle, they have lost it, right? They have lost it. And that is one of the reasons why they are currently losing. And they are currently struggling. So the point that I'm mentioning here is that there's other forms of military strategy that you can use, of warfare that you can use, such as, technology, right? Advancing in technology, gathering data, economy, media. Now, I know these things don't sound exciting, right? For those who grew up playing Call of Duty, and it's like, bro, really? Yeah, bro, really? This is how wars are won in this day and age. This is how you take control. In a world where there's nuclear powers, where there is a stalemate for all intents and purposes in terms of actual power, right? And where even the strong military entities are not able to defeat the weak ones because of this concept of guerrilla warfare, and there's a lot more to it than that. But in essence, the point stands. I'm saying in that day and age, bro, get that Call of Duty mindset out your head. Yes, they can come and just bomb the place and cause people harm, but they will not win, and they understand that causes them a lot more problems in terms of how they look in the media, in terms of the economy that gets disrupted, in terms of how people within their countries start to divide and turn against them. It's just not worth it. Which is why that they double down, triple down, quadruple down in hybrid warfare, i.e. media economy. It's why that they fund think tanks to release articles to. This is why they would come and fund misguided du'at and speakers and educators to misguide the Muslims by releasing information that was like twisted to help Muslims lose their religion and for their religion to be watered down and so on and so forth. They wanted to break our people in that way. So the reason I mentioned this to you is because if you want to actually do something, this is what you should do. It gets you a dopamine kick when you sit there and think about, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or if only we could do this, or if only we could do that. All right, you can't do that, bro. That's not on the cards. You want to help your brothers and sisters who are being slaughtered and murdered, but that's not on the cards. But there's other things you can do, right? You can get involved in the educational, intellectual, the academic battle. There's a huge one. You know, the Zionists, many of you may or may not be aware, that they funded a lot of scientific literature that came out to back them. The LGBT plus community did the exact same. They funded so much literature to back the fact that, no, you know what, being a sodomite is actually, you know, scientifically something that we can prove to be natural. So is being a transvestite and so on and so forth. They funded academia to be able to reach those goals. You can become an entrepreneur. Right? Money is power. In many, many circumstances, you could become a scholar. You could teach people the deen, the religion of Islam. You could bring people back to their salah, to their zakat, the connection from Allah, which is really the meat and the source of where victory comes from, right? You can get involved in so many different things that help move the mission forward. Yes, it takes time. I mean, bro, the Zionists spent a century to get to where they are today. But the first 50 plus, 60 plus years, getting their country, getting their state, or usurping the state of the Palestinians and claiming it as their own. And then they spent the next 50, 60, 70 years solidifying that position. They played the long game, right? You don't want to play the long game? They played the long game, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is that there's things that you can do, but you have to, you know, it's actually not hard. I remember someone said this to me over 10 years ago. It's not hard to pick up an AK-47 and just pop, 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 pop. Yeah, it requires, you know, something different internally, but at the end of the day, bro, it's not hard. A man can pick up a gun, put a trigger, bang, it's done, right? But you know what's hard, akhi? Is to build something for the sake of Allah in the darkness of the night. So you know what? I'm going to help people with their deen. You know what? What are the Muslims even clinging on to? Is it nationalism? Is it a flag? Is it a national identity? Or is it lillah, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? Is that what brings us closer? Is that what unites this concept of the ummah? The fact that we have one Lord, that we worship Him alone. Okay, then how do we worship Him? And how are we supposed to treat each other? And what is the Quran? So maybe I'm going to go into Islamic scholarship and I'm going to give the people the foundation, right? Which is, what's the thing that brings us all together? What's our identity, right? Or some of us are going to say, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship. I'm going to go into academia, and I'm going to go into media. I'm going to go into journalism, and I'm going to do things without compromising my deen, but I'm going to move the needle forward in a way that's actually conducive to the 21st century, because this is the battle that's actually being fought. Imagine the way that we're being slaughtered on the hybrid battlefield, because we don't even understand that that's a battlefield, right? And we're still thinking, you know what, Call of Duty. And I'm not saying that that type of thing may not or is not effective ever, but what I'm saying is not effective today, and it's definitely not effective in this context. And we're being slaughtered in the media. We're being slaughtered in education. We're being slaughtered in terms of our aqidah. Our aqidah is being slaughtered. Look, Sahaba, bro, they sacrificed their life, their flesh and blood, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله. You will not find people that believe in Allah, that claim to believe in Allah and the last day, that are loving those that are opposing Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions, even if it's their fathers, if it's their brothers, if it's their tribesmen, if it's their sons. So if it's their fathers, subhanallah, you know, the ayah mentioned Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he told his son, I'm going to fight you in battle. It was Musa ibn Umair radiallahu anh said, you know, to his brother, come on, me and you, we're going to go to battle on the battlefield. Some of them went against their cousins. Some of them, you know, Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anh fought against his father on the battlefield. Can you imagine how difficult that sacrifice was, to literally go up against your family members? That's not what we've been tested with today. What we've been tested with is, brother, get off your backside and do something positive. Go learn the deen and share it, right? Go build some new technology that serves the Muslims, right? Go build financial infrastructure that you can use as leverage to help the Muslims and to serve the affairs of the Muslims, so on and so forth. These are the things that actually are useful and effective, that have been required from us today, and we're not doing that. So one of the ways that Shaitan keeps you busy is Call of Duty, right? Do you guys want to hear something depressing? I've been searching for a halal investment opportunity with high returns for over 15 years. And other than Bitcoin, regretfully, I never found anything solid. The opportunities I found always had one of three issues. It was either haram disguised as halal, or it was super risky and volatile, or it had painfully low returns. I'm talking the type where they mention you make your first million when you're 50. But that all changed when I interviewed the most impressive real estate investor I've ever met, Brother Sam Amin. I interviewed him on my podcast, Righteous and Rich. And he blew my mind away with a halal real estate investment opportunity where he's helping his investors get 50% returns in 2 years. Allahumma barik. In fact, some of the most well-known students of knowledge and well-respected businessmen have invested with him and made hundreds of thousands and even millions. Allahumma barik. And get this, it's actually halal. There are no dodgy fatwas. There's no tricks. It's 100% halal. But there is a catch. There's always a catch. The catch is you have to have at least $100,000 liquid ready to invest within the next 30 days to qualify for his current development project in Dubai, where it's projected that he's going to be giving 50% returns to his investors over a 2-year period, inshallah. So if you're interested and you'd like to book a call with this team, you can do so at the link below. But just a heads up, if you don't have the $100,000 ready to deploy in 30 days, they won't take that call. With that said, let's get into the podcast. When that doesn't apply right here, right now, today, I really want you to understand the point. I'm not saying that that's not something that exists. What I'm saying is that that's not something that's on the cards right now. So you could sit there and just daydream about it, or you could actually do something that's positive. So now let's go and look at how the Zionists did it, because I actually think that this is like as much as those guys are just so bad, but the way they did it, there's something incredible about it and a lesson to be learned. So let me paint the picture for you. It's 1890 or 1880 in Europe. And Jewish people, like, it's not a joke when people say that anti-Semitism existed. Bro, it really existed. Like, they'd be raped, women would be raped regularly, especially in Russia, bro, in Eastern Europe, they'll be raped, they'll be pillaged. If a man tried to do anything to stop the guy who's trying to rape his wife, he would be killed, she'd be raped. Bro, it was bad. And they always had this negative image in society. They have been in exile from their land, right? Apparently from their land for 2,000 years. And they're split all across Europe. They're in America now. They're all over the world. They're in Russia. And they're not really liked. So a guy called Theodore Herzl comes up with the idea, said, you know, we're going to create our own state. We're going to speak to the Ottoman Empire. We're going to ask them to give us that region in Palestine so we can live. We can have a place to go back home so we're not slaughtered and tortured and murdered anymore. Yeah, some very rich Jews now, like the Rothschilds and people like Theodore Herzl himself. But generally speaking, most of them were not in a great place. So they wanted to have their own state. So there were different theories about how we should do it. Some were like, listen, you know what we do? We're going to we're going to lobby a political entity. We're going to use the rich ones from amongst us, like the Rothschilds, to lobby the political entities like the British Empire, like maybe the Ottoman Empire, like, you know, whatever, and use them to kind of get us this plot of land. Others said, no, you know what? They used to call themselves practical Zionists. They said, what we're going to do is we're just going to go to Palestine. We're going to buy land. And we buy land, that's our land, we bought it illegally, we're going to start work, and then enough of us just do that until eventually that place just becomes ours. So these are the two main schools of thoughts among Zionism. Now, yeah, a guy named Chaim Weizmann, he interestingly plays a very, very pivotal role in helping the Zionists move forward. Now this guy's interesting because he's the main proponent of Zionism going from like a dream to actually now becoming a reality. So who was he? He was a professor in the University of Manchester in the UK. And it was during the World War where he was called upon because, as I mentioned to you, World War I, there was so much fighting happening between all the countries at such a high level. So many millions of people were just dying Remember, you got to keep producing firepower to keep that battle going. That firepower requires production. And there was a particular chemical called acetone that they were using, the British, for their artillery. And this acetone, they were running out of it, and they couldn't get it produced quick enough to be able to carry on the fighting. This particular man, Chaim Weizmann, he had developed a way of how to create acetone synthetically. So now you could mass produce this particular chemical that could be used for the firepower and the artillery. So that means that the UK could be back inside the fight. So the first thing I want you to understand is that this guy, he didn't have guns. He had science. He had technology, right? He was useful from a different perspective. So what happened was that he was called into the Prime Minister's office. And they're like, listen, I want you to make this thing for us now. He was like, all right, cool, we'll make it. So he basically now has access to the most powerful people in the world, some of the most powerful people in the world, right? He's got access to the guys that run the British Empire, and the British Empire is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful empire in the world at the time. So, in order to find out what happens next, I need to give you some context. Now, there's a notion, right, at the time, across the world, that the Jews, they actually pulled the strings of society from behind closed doors. Because they happen to be in big, powerful financial sectors and banking positions like the Rothschilds and whatnot, people believe that, you know what, these guys actually have like a secret thing from behind closed doors. Sounds like something that came out in the last 15, 20 years, but no, this is something that's been around for over a century. People believed the Jews were controlling things from behind the scenes. So this was like a phobia, right, that the British had, which was that, look, the Jews, they actually are a powerful entity. They didn't like them a lot of the time. There was an anti-Semitic vibe, but they understood, or they believed, and this was a myth, that they believed that these guys actually control things from behind the scenes. It was called the world Jewry. The world Jewry, right? The world Jewry. So this guy called Chaim Weizmann used this fear against the British Empire in his own advantage. He said, look, guys, there's Jews in Germany, there's Jews in the Ottoman Empire, there's Jews in Europe, there's Jews in America. And they're very rich and powerful. And he basically lets them know, I know them. And you know us Jews, bro, we're together. We hold each other down. If I make a phone call right now, I can get the Jews to be on your side. Now, why was this interesting for the British? Because the British, I told you, the fight was a stalemate. They needed America to get involved. If America entered the war on their side, they could push Germany and the Ottomans away. But if America didn't get in the war, it's going to be a stalemate. They just carry on losing. So the claim that this Chaim Weizmann makes is that, look, I know the Jews in America. I can shout them. And I can say, listen, you guys do your thing and get America into a war. But if, you don't get the Jews on your side, then I don't really have a motive to bring them in. If you say, look, we're going to give you this Zionist, nation in Palestine, if you could promise us that once you beat the Ottomans, you're going to give us a Zionist nation, then my people will get behind you. But if you don't, then actually my people might try to seek that through the Ottomans and the Germans. Like, you don't want the Jews in Germany and in the Ottoman Empire to reach out to the Jews in America and say, don't get involved. You know why? Because Ottomans are going to give us Palestine. They're going to give it to us. You don't want that. So you have, Mark Sykes, the guy from Sykes-Picot Agreement, going hysterical, right? You have Lloyd George, Arthur Balfour, all these guys like, yeah, you know what? In order to win this war, bro, we need America. And it's true, man. We need the world Jewry on our side. The world Jewry. Jewry. We need them on our side. Because if they're not on our side, America can't get involved. And actually, they can't go around the other side. Britain believed this so much that actually, you know what they started doing? They actually, once they agreed and they got the Balfour Declaration, which is the document that mentioned that, we believe we're basically going to back the right for Jews to have a home inside Palestine, which is the document that started off this whole thing. they actually started dropping leaflets. The British started dropping leaflets through airplanes over areas in Germany where the Jews lived to say that the British are going to give the Jews of Germany their home in Palestine. As in, they even tried to manipulate them. Do you understand? So this was the thing that helped Chaim Weizmann get his foot in the door. What I want to mention to you here is that this guy was extremely shrewd and strategic. They didn't have an army. They didn't even have this control from behind the scenes, right? Yeah, they had money, but they weren't not like this crazy super economic power. Yeah. No. In fact, they weren't even liked in society at the time. But he understood. This is called psychological psychops, psychological warfare, right? Media warfare, all these different things combined, they created a strategy that ultimately got them to have the backing of the United Kingdom. And when the United Kingdom started to get weak after World War II and America became the strongest entity, boom, we're going to roll with America. America's going to be our big cousin, our big brother that's going to support us all the way to now, where they spilled the blood of innocent women and children. So the moral of the story here is that you can actually gain victory, even at a time where kinetic warfare is the thing, right? They were able to secure land where they didn't get involved in any of that. Yeah, they have a big bad military right now that looks big and bad when it's slaughtering innocent people and spilling the blood of innocent women and children, but they didn't have that to start off with. It's actually remarkable when you think about it. They were given a state, bro. They were given a state on the back of what? On the back of them just using these tactics and strategy and doing everything other than picking up a gun. In fact, if they pick up a gun, they would have been demonized. They would have been seen as worse. Maybe they would not have got the sympathy that was required, but they still got to work and did what they needed to do to be able to steal the land of our innocent brothers and sisters over 100 years ago. My appeal to you is, my brother, my sister, do something positive, right? Now you have this information. Allah has given you skills. Perhaps academia is your route. Perhaps Islamic scholarship is your route. Perhaps what? Perhaps your route is entrepreneurship. You're going to do something amazing economically for the Muslims. Perhaps it's I don't know what it is. But you can think of ways to do something sincerely, purely for Allah's sake that helps move the needle forward for the Muslims. And here's the underlining point here, which I left to the end intentionally, which is that, remember, bro, you're not the one who gives victory. Allah gives victory. Allah gives victory however it is that He wills. You don't need to worry about the outcome. You just need to take the means and do whatever is required to help move the cause of Allah forward. Allah said, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدَهُ? Is Allah not sufficient to take care of the needs of His slaves? Absolutely He is. Allah is enough to take care of the needs of His slaves. So your responsibility, my responsibility is not the outcome. It's just to do the work. And remember, أَلَيْسَ الصُّبْحُ بِقَرِيبٍ? Allah Azza wa Jal, He said to Prophet Lut, Allah says in the Quran that the angel said to Prophet Lut, he said, is the morning not close? إِنَّ مَوْعِدَهُمُ الصُّبْحِ. Their appointment, i.e. those that are oppressing and torturing and are trying to attack Prophet Lut and his guests, because their appointment, they're going to be dealt with in the morning. أَلَيْسَ الصُّبْحُ بِقَرِيبٍ? And is the morning not close? It's very close. So it's up to you, akhi. The darkness is going to pass over, and very soon the day is going to break. That day can break with the help and the support of Allah Azza wa Jalla. It can happen with a click of a finger, kind of faster than a click of a finger. The issue is, are we going to do what's required of us? Now, all these things that I mentioned, let me not confuse you for a second, thinking that there's more time and effort that should be put in academia and entrepreneurship and technology and so on and so forth than actually worshipping Allah. Because that's the foundation of it all. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if you believe, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, that Allah Azza wa Jalla makes a promise to those of you who believe and do good deeds, that He will make them firm on this earth. Allah will give you victory again. Allah will make you solid again. He will remove the oppression and the fear that you have and replace it with safety, He said. يَعْبُدُونَنِي, but worship me alone. لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْئًا. Don't worship any other false gods besides me. With that said, I got to love you and leave you. Many of you may or may not be aware, releasing a video every single day up until the 6th of September, because we're launching our network of 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs. Muslims making millions, people who fear Allah Azza wa Jal and make money. You know why? Because that money is leverage, right? When wealth is in the hands of the righteous, they do good things with that money. So if you're a person who qualifies, you're a 7-figure plus entrepreneur, you can join the waiting list from the link below, inshallah ta'ala, and maybe, just maybe, you know, you can join us in collaborating from an entrepreneurial perspective and doing great things. With that said, subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.